Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Backline with Rob and Adam. My name is Adam Collier, this of the Second City Main Stage.
And my name is Rob Norman. I'm author of the cool improv book, Improvising Now, a Practical Guide to Modern Improv.
Rob, do you know that podcasts, media, I consider it magic? Do you know that?
You consider podcasts and media magic?
Because through the magic of this podcast, nobody will know that you fell asleep and missed our record time. And no one will know the inconvenience you put me through. They'll just think this is a normal episode. Isn't that amazing?
To be fair, Adam, I do have a migraine today. And
You had a migraine last time.
So I'm very, very sorry I let you down. But I was going through a thing, and I closed my eyes, because when you have a migraine, nothing works. And I slept right through a record, and I'm very, very sorry. However, it makes you feel better. I'm in a lot of pain. And throughout this podcast, I realized that we've recorded when I've had migraines before, and I wear sunglasses. But now I'm just going to be able to see my face. And so this eye keeps closing, because this is the bad eye. This is the eye that doesn't want, there's pain behind it. So everyone will see me suffer for the next hour.
Great. I mean, I'm already getting a lot. I know the podcast isn't live, but I'm getting a lot of texts and emails.
Me too. A lot of people sympathing with me, saying that you doing that
account
publicly was kind of shitty.
Oh, here's
Yeah.
some interesting.
Hello?
Because we give tips on improv, and here's some tips. If you're gonna take a lie down, set an alarm just in case, because you might fall asleep, and that way you got a fail safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I digress. Rob, how's life? How's everything else other than migraine?
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Okay.
How's it with you? How's life with you?
Yeah, pretty good. I will be, by the time this is released, I'll be back in Toronto. I'm heading back on Thursday, which will be very nice. Get to see you, get to see my wife and my puppy and my family. So that'll be really nice. So looking forward to that. And if you're watching, you'll see me in a goatee today. Even if you're just listening, you should probably check in just to see what it's like. It's horrific, but it serves a purpose, and we'll be gone by next week. But
You
Rob,
grew a beard for a while. Do you remember that period of your life where you were like trying on the beard?
yeah, I really like playing around with it, like because it grows so fast. So it's like I could do something as a joke or as an experiment and be like, oh, didn't really take, and then no one enjoyed it. I'll get rid of it.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting when you had that beard going was having a beard was kind of my thing. Like I was working really hard. Like I started with like very patchy bits and then worked towards having a full beard. And you showed up to a beard perfect. Like I don't think you even have to shave. It just comes in the places it's supposed to, as thick as it can. And then the other parts doesn't grow. So
Yeah, if I just focus really hard and I just like tense my body, I can grow a beard in a day.
that's cool.
Rob, in migraine form, still supportive of other jokes. So, Rob, today is a bit of a surprise. It has a little something to do with a class that you've been teaching. And I know people are excited that things are coming back to in person, but you're teaching this class. It is the world famous.
Don't bring it
The
up.
world famous, not just an improv. Like, my mom knows about this class. It's called Improv 2?
That's right.
Improv Basics? Something like that?
Improv Basics 2. So this is a class that's a prerequisite to Improv Basics 3.
And you have to have completed Improv Basics 1.
Right. So like it has a relationship with many other classes, and a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are wondering how you get in Improv Basics 2, and the answer is you just do Improv Basics 1.
So I think I have a few people who are listening right now being like, what the fuck's happening? So Rob, talk to me about this class. Why did you want to talk about this class today?
Well, I'm teaching this beginner level class for beginner improvisers. And it's very different than what you and I normally teach. We would normally teach advanced improvisers. And it's fascinating to go back to the beginning. It's fascinating to go back and see people try on different games that are, the games that you first play when you're first starting out, seeing them struggle, seeing how they approach it. And while I've been teaching Improv Basics too, I keep coming back to this idea of how do you get good? And there's some very ambitious people in the class, and they want to know, how do I get good at this thing? And so as I've been teaching, I just find myself talking about a couple categories. Mm-hmm. And this morning, I added on a couple, and I thought maybe you and I could go over them, and you could give me your thoughts on it.
Love it. Yeah. It's improv is anyone listening to this, you love improv. Like, there's absolutely no reason for you to be listening to this if you don't love improv. Mm-hmm. And I think we can all remember when we were in that pocket of like, I know the basics, I know about them, I know some famous improvisers, I know some books, I've seen some shows, and you are addicted. You love the lifestyle, you love the culture, you love being in the audience of shows, being in a show is amazing, and all you want is more. And it's a difficult place to be because there's only so much you can absorb, there's only so much you can do, and some things just take time. But the aggressive nature of people wanting to get good is very real. I think especially after all of this backlog of pandemic performances, people around the world have been able to study with anyone they want, really. And now it's like, okay, now's the time to hunker down. I want to get good. So let's talk it out. In your mind, Rob, what do you say? How do you get good?
So I've been thinking about these 6 categories, and we can go through each of them, but here they are. Aptitude, skill, education, taste, opportunity to compete, and then drive, or your love of improv. And so those would be the 6 things that you would combine to get someone where they need to be in the improv community. These are the things that you might be looking for if you were looking for how to create someone who's very, very good, ready to join your company.
So, for those listening at home, aptitude, skills, education, taste, opportunity to compete, and your drive, love of improv. I noticed that the order you put them in leads to no acronym, no usable acronym. Did that not come into your mind of like, maybe you should try and create something?
Listen, man, it's been a rough day, okay?
Hey, if you're out there and you can come up with the best acronym for this, we want to hear it. Okay, so Rob, let's talk it through. Let's just start with number 1. Aptitude.
Aptitude.
What does this mean to you?
So this is like your talent. This is what you have going into your first improv class. On St. Mary's improv team, Adam.
Oh,
were you the best on the team?
No, not at all. I liked it a lot, but it was like, it was what, you know what it was? It was, what? I think, someone who was generally known as being very funny, class clowny kind of thing, but I had no concrete skills on what to do with those things. And so this is Rob's referring to the high school improv games in Canada, the Canadian improv games. And so, yeah, I was on a team when I was like 17 with people who were in OAC. So they were like 19. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just watching. I don't even think I heard of Yes And, but I was just kind of like willing to try things, but definitely not the best.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's very similar to my own story, where I was definitely good, but definitely not the best. I was never the best in the room when I was starting. And that's actually probably true. Like,
always.
You're still not. You're in high school and you have a group of people and you're not the funniest. And then you go to take your first improv class and you're not the funniest. Then you join your first improv troupe and you're not the funniest. Definitely not the worst person in the space, but definitely not the best person in the space. Get to Second City. Definitely not the funniest person in the cast. And so, like, you're slowly kind of working your way up through these levels and you're kind of developing. But aptitude is the thing that I think everyone assumes you need to have to be good at improv. But I don't think it is as valuable as we make it sound like. Like I've never taught an improv class and had someone show up to the class and naturally be good. Is that fair to say?
Like a beginner class.
Like someone shows up. I'm trying to think of another thing.
Like you're not at a festival
where you could just be,
and someone comes in and is like,
no.
"Oh no, you're good." You're talking about someone taking their first class
beginner
and
class,
being like, "You're amazing."
Right. Like the idea that we all had dreamed of when we first started improvising, that you would go into your level B class, you would start improvising. Andrew Alexander would walk by and be like, "Whoa, yo, what are you working with? You're hired. You're going on main stage tomorrow." Like I could imagine a world in which maybe as a stand-up that happens, that you show up to it and instantly you're just good at it. You're able to do it. Maybe a singer might be able to do that. Music comes naturally to them. Within improv, so much of it is about the rules of collaboration. So much is about dynamic and how we interact with other people, that it is impossible to be naturally good at it. You may have a big booming voice. You may have a great singing voice. You may be naturally great at stagecraft. You might have a face that's charming and expressive. But beyond that, your natural ability is only going to get you so far in this game.
So this is step one. You just kind of like, what is your base level aptitude?
Right.
Well, number two.
Yeah.
Usually comes next. Skills.
Skills. So skills is a thing that you and I would probably be a big proponent of, which would be getting your reps in. So going on stage and having the experiences, failing enough times so that you can know how to do a good scene, you know how to get yourself into trouble, you know how to get yourself out of trouble. This is really about performance. And, if I had to choose between someone who had an aptitude or no skill, or little aptitude and lots of skill, I would probably choose the second person. Because, well, it depends on how long you have to train them. But I would feel like if they're going on stage tomorrow, I definitely want to make sure that I have the person who is skilled, because that's really the heart of being an improviser. You could be so funny and have excellent skills and figure out how to still do a killer show.
Oh yeah, because if you got skills, you may be, and I'm in such hockey mode because it was the trade deadline, and a lot of things happen where a lot of evaluating players and their worth.
I know.
Yeah, and you think of, oh my God, well, if I've got like a third or fourth liner, someone who's like, they're not the flashiest, but they've got the skills down and they'll put the work in. You need those people, and you not being the funniest in the room, who gives a shit? If you've got skills, then we can work with that, or we can train those skills in. It feels like that's probably the thing that is also the most intimidating when you are coming into a newer class, is seeing people with extreme skills and thinking they're just naturally like that. I can't do that. I could never do that. And that probably deters a lot of people from pursuing improv further, because they feel like, how the hell am I going to compete with that person? I just got here.
Right. So it's other performers and audience members confusing skill with aptitude. They think that you just naturally started this way. They don't see the 10,000 hours, whatever it is. Also, I think with skill, you can figure out how to get around your own faults. So, for example, I had a really bad injury. My foot was broken, and I had to learn how to walk again. And while going through physio, my physiotherapist was like, cool, well, you're walking, but the way that you learn to walk now is you're using muscles that that are not involved in walking to protect the muscles that got hurt. So you could use different, for example, let's say, you hurt your knee or whatever, you might start using different muscles around your knee to protect your knee because it's sensitive to you. Well, this could also be true within improv. So let's say you're not great at characters. You might develop a really good sardonic voice so that you never have to do a character. No one even knows that you can't do a character because you have enough skills to kind of protect it. So skills, I think, also kind of contribute to our comedic voice because it allows us to maybe hide the things that we are not great at.
Yeah, very interesting. Especially when you start to build these skills and you get really good at one or two of them, and then you're like, uh-oh, I've now reached a new level with these skills. I'm now maybe, I got into the conservatory, or I got on that show. Oh no. Well, now if they ask me to do a character, I'm fucked. They think I've got all of the skills, but I just got 2 skills. And I've used those to their maximum advantage, and I've avoided other skills, and now what do I do?
Totally. And like you might show up to a show and be like, oh, that person's getting a bunch of laughs in this way. I'm going to go try and do what they do because I want to explore that. And you're like, you get there and you're like, oh my God, I'm not good at this at all. I can't do this. I can't do this scene. I can't do this character. So either you need to get more skills or maybe you're just not destined to do that character or that kind of comedy. Maybe it's for someone else.
Yeah. And getting skills, I think, is what leads us to our next header on this list is education, right? Mm-hmm. Education, God, it's never been more accessible. God, when we were coming up, we used to think like, oh my God, wouldn't it be so great to go and study at this place or go and visit this place? And it's like, well, yeah, if I got thousands of dollars and all the time in the world, we could do that. And now it's kind of like, you still need the money, but you can do it all from your home. So what does education mean to you?
Well, education, or like maybe this is just the theoretical part of improv, which is like you understand how it works. So, for example, I would say that improvisers in Toronto now are better educated than they've ever been in the history of our art form. I think they know more. I think they know more styles. When we were coming up, game of the scene was on the very edge of our knowledge base. If you were talking about game or you're performing with game of the scene, older improvisers would be like, what are you kids up to? What's this game of the scene thing? And many of those people were playing with game of the scene, but they just didn't have a language to talk about it. They didn't have a different way to think about it. All of their understanding of improv came through experiences, came from being on Second City main stage for 7 years and performing every single night. So everything that they needed to know, they probably already knew because they had enough trial and error to understand it. It was in their body. But maybe if they were going to teach a class and try and explain what happened out on stage, it might be a little bit more difficult for them. You could also imagine the opposite of this, that someone perhaps has aptitude, they have an education, they've been taking classes online, but they don't have enough experience. So all of their knowledge of how improv works is theoretical. I think a couple episodes ago we talked about the idea of my mom going to the library and getting Truth in Comedy and having me read this book and explain what the Herald is. And theoretically I understand it, but I have no relationship with the Herald. I've never done it. I've never seen it performed before. So, having a theoretical basis for improv is great, but without the experience of doing it, it's not very helpful at all. So having some kind of education or theoretical basis for your work, I think, is going to be very, very important. And that's why classes are kind of important.
Yeah, and I think, like, for me, it goes back to that old kind of, like, 80s and 90s thing that you'd see on, like, video games, where it was like, say no to drugs, sure, and also knowledge is power. And for myself, I remember before I had gone through UCB, I was like, I've read the manual. Like, I think I get it. I've taken some workshops with UCB people, but I always felt a little like I just don't know what to do. I don't know what they're talking about. And then having gone through it now and had to do like UCB Heralds, and as I've said many times before, my first scene, they stopped and were like, don't do what you're doing. And I was like, this is what I always do. But now having gone through it, having gone through IO, studied with all the annoyance people, Second City, you just feel like I'm aware of so many of the options out there. I'm aware of so many different styles of play. I can adapt. I can adjust based on any number of factors, whether that be the date of the show, the time of the show, my role in the show, what kind of show we are doing. All of those things make me feel, at least, at ease. It makes me feel like I'm available to do whatever. You just let me know what's up, and I can play. You let me know what style you want to do, I can join in. And that comes from education. I've read the books, I've done the things, I've seen the shows, I've talked with people, gone to festivals. I feel educated and therefore feel a bit more empowered whenever I step into a theater.
Yeah, and it's interesting seeing people who have a lot of stage experience, but maybe don't have a great theoretical knowledge of what they're doing, and watching them trying to explain what they do on stage is really interesting. Them trying to search for the words or trying to search for the analogy to describe what it feels like, because to them it's just what you just do. You just do it. You just go on stage and you say yes and it just happens. And it's not like they necessarily have a procedure in their head, or they haven't quite categorized it, but it's all there in their body. Their body knows what to do. Their brain just maybe can't quantify it for someone else.
And I think that's when you get those notes from your coach or teacher that you find so frustrating, right? It's like, Rob, next scene, I think you just got to go for it. Really let it loose. What does that mean? Just when you're yes-anding, really yes-and. No questions. You're like, why? Tell me why. And you're just like, you're writing in your book, I guess, go for it next time. Explore the environment. I don't know what any of this means, but it creates this broken telephone of like, you're not good, and I'll tell you why you're not good. It's because you're not doing what I instinctually do. If you do more like me, I guess you'll be good. I have no idea. You're a different person. See you later.
Yeah, it's like a mystery to them, so it ends up being a mystery to you in your notebook as well.
Yeah. It's not the best time. This is interesting. Your number 4 that you have here, and I know that you didn't put it in order, taste. How do you get good at improv? Taste. What are you talking about?
What the fuck are you talking about?
What the fuck are you... Taste? Get out of my workshop.
What the fuck are you talking about, man? Taste. I think taste is probably the most important one, or one of the most important ones. Taste is your ability to know what is good and what is bad. It's to know what kind of show you want to do. It's to know what kind of improv you want to do. And that's probably the effect that you get from seeing lots of improv. There is a very famous YouTube clip of Ira Glass from This American Life. I'm sure everyone knows who that guy is, but he's a host of a public radio show.
Hey there, podcast listeners.
In Chicago. There you go. And he was giving a talk about creating podcasts. And he was talking about how challenging it is when you're first starting, because you have your skills and then you have your taste. So you know what's good. You know what you want your podcast to sound like, and it's up here. But your skill set to get you there is down here. And there's a kind of...
for those of us who are just listening, Rob's got the skills on one hand very low. And your taste for what you want to do is very high. I see.
That's
right.
And so there's the gap between your very low skill and your very high taste. And it's frustrating because you know what you want, but you just can't get there. You can't figure out how to create that kind of improv show. And you and I experienced this very, very early on. We made some very curated decisions about, for example, a kind of sketch show that we wanted to perform in, the kind of sketch that we wanted to do. And we began to try and do those kinds of sketches, and we found out very quickly that we had a lot of limitations in our writing, in our performance, in how we structure the show. And only by doing this process a bunch were we able to kind of strengthen those skills and hopefully try and kind of bridge that gap between what our skills were and what our taste was. But if we hadn't have made that choice to change the way that we were writing sketch and performing sketch, I think we would have had much different careers than we ended up having.
Yeah, and we definitely felt those growing pains of, this is our first show. We're trying to do a review cabaret style show, just like the Second City, but those people, that's their full-time job, and they've been training for years for it. We kind of went for it without all of that, and we learned a ton. Probably wasn't our best show, and then we got a little better, and we did it again. Still some struggles, but did it again. And then we all got hired. Through a lot of that pain and struggle, I mean, it was a lot of fun as well, but like, it was difficult to try to achieve something so far above our own skill level. And with our limited resources, we, like, the Second City main stage is paid. That's their full-time job. They don't have to pay the director. They don't have to search for a venue. They don't have to advertise their show. They don't have to come in between work and rehearse and then learn lines at home and all of that kind of stuff. But feels like without those steps, we would kind of be waiting for someone else to tell us what our taste should be. Because you can either make these bold choices and then say, ooh, I actually don't love this. Let me try something new. Or you do it and you refine it as you go. But unless you kind of have to make those artistic decisions, you're kind of at the mercy of other people and their decisions.
Yeah, and I feel like taste is really where the improviser goes from a kind of hobbyist to an artist. Like, the minute you decide there are things that you don't want to do and things that you think are really cool and you do want to do, you become an artist. What do I mean by that? It would be very easy just to show up, do Improv Basics 1. Not great, but you get to do Improv Basics 2, which is really exciting. And then maybe you go to Improv Basics 3. That's right. And then you go to conservatory, then you join a troupe, and you just kind of follow along with the general current of everyone's kind of trajectory, the career that you're supposed to follow. And a director or a teacher shows up and says, we're doing this, and you do that, and you do this, and you do that. And, you know, our career also kind of changed when we decided there was a certain style of improv that we wanted to play and do, and other things that we thought were not for us. And it became very clear in the community, oh, now you have an expertise. These two guys, they're obsessed with Game of the Scene. Game of the Scene is their thing. They don't want to mess around with anything else. Oh, we need someone to teach Game of the Scene. Well, who's going to teach it? Well, it's going to be Adam. And again, these are just decisions that we make. You just choose that this is the thing that you love, and this is the thing that you're passionate about. Make it known and chase after it.
Love that. The next is the opportunity to compete. Well, we're improvisers. Why would we compete with anyone? We're a group that supports each other nonstop. And no matter what you do, Rob, I support it. I don't want to compete with anyone. I don't want an opportunity. I want the group to have an opportunity. Yes and no buts. Tell me. Opportunity to compete.
Yeah. This is a great mindset until you and I show up to Second City General auditions. And then all of a sudden we hit reality where
no, I was supporting. I supported everyone. You got to hire me. I was just being a good improviser. I followed all the rules. Got to hire me.
Yeah, but Adam, there's someone better than you. They're clearly better than you.
Yeah, but they took the spotlight. They showed their skills instead of supporting my lack of skills.
I mean, yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that you've made that joke because I think it's very telling about our community. Our community does talk a lot about support. It does talk a lot about, like, everyone's equal. It's quite egalitarian improv, or at least it's supposed to be. But there's only a limited amount of spots. they're really, not everyone gets to play. Not everyone gets to be a part of every troupe or every show. So whether we like it or not, there is a competition going on. And I mean, maybe there are some people who would say we should eliminate all form of competition within our industry or within our art form and just let people show up and just have fun and connect. And I think, yes, I think if we're creating a kind of improv social club, then that is how it should work. And maybe that's what jams are for. But being able to compete with other people, being able to test your skills in relation to other people, I think is essential to your own growth. I don't think I would be a very good improviser at all, and I'm still not, beat you to it. But I don't think I would be a good improviser if I hadn't built such close relationships with you and Jason. I really don't. Because constantly I had two people who started where I started, the same ability, the same level, and every time you guys got something that I didn't get, there was no excuse for me not to have it. Jason has an agent. Well, he had a greater aptitude than either you or I. He started with so many of the puzzle pieces already together. But then you got an agent. And I was like, well, I have to go get an agent now. I don't really have a choice. There's no reason for me not to have an agent. And I think this ability to compete is so important. I think we've also been talking a lot about, diversity, equity, inclusion over the last 5 years. And so, we talk a lot about representation and we talk a lot about opportunity to perform. But I think the other part of this is just, how do we make it fair enough so that everyone can participate in playing with other people and challenging themselves or others? So, the opportunity to compete would be, to get good is you have to be able to go do the shows. So, we've had this big conversation about accessibility. Every theater that we have is upstairs or downstairs. So, there's no elevators. So how do you get to do the shows and fail enough to know how to get better? Or, for example, another thing that would be unequitable, let's say, for example, AC, after college, your parents say, okay, for 2 years, we're going to pay for all of your rent and all of your food so you can just keep doing improv, versus someone who's working 3 jobs. It's not going to be a fair fight because you're going to be around to be like, oh, someone at Second City needs you to move boxes. Will you do it? And of course, you're going to be like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, oh, there you go. Meanwhile, someone else is like, doing whatever job they have to pay for the rent. So this ability to compete is a bigger issue for us, and I can't deny the power of failure. I can't deny that moment where you're in your improv career and the thing that you really want you don't get, because it completely reorganizes your way of thinking. I think I've told a bunch of stories on this podcast about times where I wanted something or I auditioned for something and I didn't get it, or you and Jason got something that I felt like I was entitled to have. And the outcome of that was always anger. I was always very angry and hurt that I wasn't included. But the next step after that was I went out and I made something else. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be in this show? Cool, I'm going to create my own show. Here are my people. We're going to do a show. And I think those failures along the way are essential. I feel bad. You've never been fired by Second City? Man, you got to get fired by Second City at least once. 3 or 4 times, you'll be an incredible improviser, but at least once you're going to get better from that experience, because you're going to go and do the things that no one else would do. So sometimes I feel like competing and failing is a incredible gift that we give people in the community. It doesn't feel great at the time, but acknowledging that there is a kind of free market of opportunity here, and knowing that you're going to have to outperform others to get what you want is a big part of this industry.
Well, a few things come up in my brain. One being the failure feels so raw and so you feel so exposed.
Mm.
But after a while, through that, I think you start to realize, oh, everybody's just concerned with themselves. You and I, if we're on a show and there's multiple acts, we finish the show, we go to the bar, we're not talking about the other people. Who cares? That's on, like, I have no idea what their goals were or what kind of state of mind they were in. People aren't concerned with your failure. So feel the freedom to fail, because the only one who's going to dwell on it is you. And no one is thinking about it. Every single improviser who is good was bad and had to fail a million times. So it's okay. It's okay to fail so hard, because no one will remember and no one really cares. And that's honestly the truth. What people do remember is if you're kind of a bad, shitty person, if you mistreated people, if you were late, if you left early. Like, they remember the behavior off stage. But the actual talent on stage, hey man, I've had the worst shows of my life recently. I've had great shows recently. Your odds just improve with all of the things that we've been talking about. The other thing is this idea of like a supportive community versus the competitive community. It's like, this isn't new. There's nothing wrong if you want to be a improv hobbyist and pop in and out as you go. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. They have this in every level of youth sports. They have what they call house league, which is anyone can join. Sometimes we don't even count who wins or what the points are at a young age, because we want people to enjoy it. Great, you can do that with improv your entire life. But also at the youth level of sports, they have the option. Do you want to try out for the select or rep teams? What this means is you're facing competition, your skills will greatly improve, but you're not guaranteed a spot. You're going to have to beat out other people. So this is not a new thing, and either path is whatever you choose. But if your choice is, I really want to become like a top-level improviser, then you may have to go through this. And sometimes it'll go well, sometimes it won't. But without the experience, I mean, it's going to be tough to grow.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're in a community that maybe there are 6 improvisers in your town, it's going to be very hard to compete with your own troupe. You know, if there's 2 improv troupes, you're going to get better quick, because you'll be watching what the other group is doing, stealing their stuff, and they'll steal your stuff, and you're going to go back and forth until you guys can both get to that level where you need to be, right?
If you are in a town with 6 improvisers, I want to see 3 duos. I want those duos to go on a night, and they have to compete. They got to do a Catch-23 style improv competitive show, and the 6 people are not even on the same team. Just, if you're out there, you got a 6-person improv town, duo it up. All right, Rob, we've reached the last section of your how to get good. The last heading is your drive and love of improv. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, I mean, this is again one of them that I would say is the most important, which is loving this thing we do. You and I have an improv podcast for apparently no reason. There's really no reason for us to continue doing this. The reason
was very clear. You and I would get together socially and have these conversations and we'd say, is there anything else we want to talk about? It's like, I don't think so. Well, let's record this for the good of the world. Other than that, no reason, just to hang out.
No reason to see each other. But yeah, so I mean, like, I feel like, you know, I know it's gauche to say that you like Malcolm Gladwell. It's like being like, I like Marvel movies, but I like them both. And if you've read Outliers, you could talk about, he describes talent as an exceptional love of something. And he mentions this one example, this one anecdote with Wayne Gretzky. Do you remember this example, Adam?
I like how you say it with such disdain. Wayne Gretzky. Okay.
So there's this story about this wine manufacturer named Wayne Gretzky, and they were talking about when he was on the Oilers, the LA Kings, he figured out this way to do this new way of scoring a goal where he takes the puck and he flips it, hits the goalie in the back from behind the net, and then it goes into the net. And the way Gladwell describes it is everyone in the league had the ability, had the stick handling to pull off this move. Nobody had ever thought of doing that because it's a weird way of scoring a goal. And he argues that that was only the result of his love, thinking about the game in a way that no one had ever thought about it before. And falling in love with improv, being obsessed with improv, thinking about improv. I mean, it's most likely if you're listening to this or watching this, you have an exceptional love of improv. You're going to be able to talk about it, engage with it in ways that no one else around you will. And I feel like there's a lot of things that you could love in improv that's not the actual technical part of improv. Like you could, for example, love the community. You could love the friends you make along the way while you're taking improv classes. Those things are great, but probably won't get you better. The thing that's going to make you good is loving the actual scenes, loving the actual forms, loving the actual structures, because it's going to give you a roadmap of what to do next. It's going to allow you to pull off a move that everyone else in your level C class can't do because no one's ever done it before. No one's ever thought of improvising that character. No one's ever thought about that structure before. So
yeah,
so that's your drive. That's your love of improv.
It's so funny. There's a hockey player named Sean Avery, kind of a shitty guy, but just the same kind of thing of everyone has the ability to do this, but no one ever did. So his one of his roles on the hockey team was to stand in front of the opposing goalie and just block his view. So people can shoot and you just block the goalie's view. The goalie has to move around you. That's very normal. What he did, and no one had ever done this in the NHL's like 115-year history, he turned and faced the goalie, looked at him in his eyes, and put his hands in front of his face. Like that old like siblings thing of like, can't get mad, not touching, I'm not touching, can't get... And he just put his gloves in front of the goalie's eyes. And the goalie's like, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, I'm not touching you. You can't, like, I'm not doing anything illegal. And the refs were dumbfounded. And they had to create a rule that you can't do that based on him. And this is only like 15 years ago. But the same kind of thing of like, I love this. I want to be the best at this. Can I do this? And that happens all the time in improv, right? You're like, oh my God, I'm just going to do this thing because I don't know what else to do. And it feels like that the moments after an improv show feel like the moments before you're about to fall asleep and you come up with an idea. And you're like, I'll remember this tomorrow. And then you don't. But when you love improv, you get up and write it down. And it feels like after a show, for you and me, it's like we talk about that show for about an hour and a half. That 20-minute slot, we talk about it. We dissect it. What worked? Why? What were you thinking when you pulled that move? Oh, when you looked at me and had that little smirk, I knew exactly what you were doing. Oh my God, when this happened, when you ran into the crowd, I didn't know what was happening. Tell me what you were thinking. And we dissect it, and it starts to implant in your brain of like, oh, when this happens, this is my reaction. Oh, now when Rob looks at me like this, I know what he's thinking. And we just start to build this rapport, and you build these internal skills of, when this happens, do this. When this comes up, I've been here before. I know exactly what's going on. And it all comes from, I just fucking love this thing. It's an incredible way to build your skills. I know this sounds so lame, but like, oh, if you find a job you love, you never work a day in your life. And it's like, if you find a hobby you love, fuck work. The hobby is kind of what brings you joy. And us, like when we were in Copenhagen, we did our show, and then it was still COVID, and we were like, I don't know how comfortable, like we have to fly, I can't hang around people, I can't get sick because I got to go home. we walked the streets of Copenhagen, picked up a 6-pack of Grolsch, and we just talked about the show. And that kind of stuff is like, if you have that drive, then you're on your way.
And we've seen this happen at different theaters that we've worked in. So let's say, for example, you have a sketch show or an improv show, and you go, you know what? In our community, we don't have that many improvisers, and we need someone who's a really good singer, or we need this particular person to do this kind of role in our show. So we're going to drop them in. We're going to parachute them into the show. And they're really good actors. They're trained up the wazoo. They can do scenes better than anyone else. And you put them into your cast, and they start performing. And at first, you're like, this is great. But over time, one of the issues becomes these are people who want to be good. They want to participate in the show, but they just don't have the drive. They just don't love improv. And they're trying to learn how to love it as much as you love it, or they're trying to learn as much as the rest of the cast loves it. But they just don't. And so even this person who has this advantage over you, all of this experience, all of this aptitude, all of these skills that you don't have, the idea that you love improv and think about it 24/7, it's never going to, you're never going to find your way into this community. It's impossible. It's impossible to compete if you don't love improv as much as the person beside you, because they will keep growing and changing and building.
And I think something just important to note, that it's like, oh, I'm listening to this podcast and I don't think about improv 24 hours a day. Am I shitty? Am I not a good improviser? And I always think of my friend Nick. And Nick was one of the most talented people I ever met. Played provincial soccer, AAA hockey, was in like all the bands. And his parents really pushed him. And by the time he was like 19, he was like, I hate all this stuff. I've been doing it so much that I'm done. And so I think just self-assessing what is my drive and keeping it in a healthy position. And if you have the ability to like think about it all the time and talk about it all the time, great. But if you're someone who's like, once a week, it's my favorite day, it's improv class day, or it's improv show, that can be enough for you, right? Everybody's going to have their own capacity for improv in their life, and just recognizing where you're at and what you want, right? Whatever you want is 100% correct. Wanting what someone else wants is not going to lead you anywhere fun. And knowing that, hey, this is what I want and that's 100% okay, good. I hope everyone knows that.
Yeah, and I think you flagged something really nicely there, Adam. Like, again, our community, for some reason, has blurred the line between student, hobbyist, and professional. Why? What are we doing here? I remember there was a time where I had someone in my class and they auditioned for conservatory, and I was on the panel and they didn't get in. And this is like a 50-year-old man. And we're having a little meeting to talk about what he can do better for his next audition. And the guy just starts crying in the middle of our meeting. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And he basically goes, I've been with those people since level A. And they're like my best friends or whatever. And now they're all going to hang out and I'm not in part of the friend group anymore. And I was like, holy shit. Like, it was clear that this person maybe didn't love improv. Maybe they didn't have any aspirations to do it full time, but they definitely loved the community. And the friends that they made were incredibly valuable to them. And their friends who were all very ambitious, who wanted to do this at a professional level, he was trying to keep up with them. And so that was a very heartbreaking example of one of the negative effects of confusing these lines in this way. If that gentleman had been in the local improv social club, where everyone was always included and everyone could always perform, I think he'd be very happy just seeing his friends every week. But instead, it caused quite a bit of problems. So, yeah, whatever you want to do with improv is completely right. And, maybe you're improvising because you want to be a better writer or better actor, or maybe it's just something that you want to do. Maybe you're a performer by nature, but you got a family and you don't have time to learn the scripts. All of that is completely okay with me, and all of that is, there's a place for you in our improv community. Absolutely. But I think we also have to be mindful, if you're coming to improv in a part-time, casual way, then it's not fair to yourself to expect that you're going to see the same results as someone who's doing this full-time, this is their entire life, they live, breathe it. If this is the only option you have, you dropped out of university, you have no other aptitude, you have no other drive, improv is the only thing that you have in your life, you will always be better at this than someone who's being casual. Because if the only way you can eat is by being good at improv, you're going to find a way to get really good at improv. Because you have to. Or you will die. You will starve to death and die.
Wait, what? No.
Yeah, that's right, Adam.
Okay, so we've gone through your list. So just to kind of wrap up, what do you think these categories tell us about community development?
I think for us, when we are creating shows, when we're trying to figure out what we want our community to look like, these are things for us to think about. I think that's also very valuable for us to think about for our own personal development, to self-assess and see where we are at in our improv growth. We're having conversations all the time about, how do we change our community, or, let's say, for example, you have a wide range of new improvisers coming up. You and I have experienced this firsthand, where it's like, oh, we have 3 students in our class that we're very excited about, that we think are going to be the next big things. And you and I have never been right. The people who you think are going to succeed aren't always the people who you think, because they may have the best aptitude or skills at the time, but it's completely irrelevant. 3 years from now, all of those things change. A little bit of taste, a little bit of drive, oof, you're in a whole new ballpark. So, I think if we are building out new parts of the community, if we're reaching out to different communities, the things that I would be really looking at is how do we first get folks to love this thing that we're doing? How do we get people engage with it in a way that allows them to develop the skills? I think love comes first. Skills is always going to come second. Skills are a kind of byproduct of loving this thing that we do.
Well, now you are reciting my vows. Love comes first for my wife. Her skills, those are second. I definitely married her for her skills. I would love to know, people out there, we've got a lot of teachers, a lot of theater owners that are listening, and a lot of students. What do you say when someone says, how do you get good? What advice do you have? Or if you're a student, what's the thing that you found got you good? Is there something that springboarded you? Share it with us, because we'd love to share it with the community. You can always reach out to us at The Backline Pod on Facebook and Twitter, at The Backline Podcast on Instagram. Rob, anything on stage, off stage that you are excited about right now?
Yeah, and this is directly about us. So I don't know if you know this, Adam, but on YouTube, you hit a special benchmark. When you have 100 subscribers, you get a customized URL. So you can do youtube.com/thebacklinepod. And when you click in that URL, you go to our YouTube. Because we don't have 100 subscribers right now, we have to do this very long address. So if you are listening to this, if you're watching this, I would really love for you to click subscribe. And here's the reason why. Because it is a personal dream of mine to have the website www.youtube.com/bingo bongo improv time. And I can't do that right now without 100 subscribers. So if you could do me the favor of subscribing to this so that you could click in the words bingo bongo improv time, that would make me really happy. I would really appreciate that.
From a sick migraine-filled boy, he just wants his bingo bongo improv. Well, yeah, I will definitely recommend subscribing. You get some great perks. We'll fill you in on what those perks are later. But Rob, for me, there's a new show called Winning Time: The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. It's on HBO. It is an Adam McKay show starring John C. Reilly, and it's all about the Lakers dynasty rise with Magic Johnson. And it is so good and just so fun. I've only seen one episode, but it just came out. So I would recommend it. I just love it. It's very much in the style of The Big Short, if it was done kind of like in 1991. So yeah, a lot of fun. I would definitely check that out.
Can I share one thing with you about Winning Time?
Sure.
It is the reason why Adam McKay and Will Farrell no longer work together. Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
So in this process, I guess, Adam McKay really wanted to do this. Will Ferrell's a huge basketball fan, and his very good friend cast John C. Reilly in the part that Will Ferrell wanted. And so they were like, okay, let's go our separate ways.
It's tough because, like, I love Will Ferrell, but, like, and I'm sure just because I've seen John C. Reilly in the role, I don't know. It requires a certain groundedness that I don't know. I don't know if Will would be better at it than John C. Reilly.
I mean, I think this is, and also John C. Reilly apparently looks like the guy quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
I feel like this was a conversation about, like, I'm trying to make the perfect project, and one person's like, we're buds. We did all of this work. We became famous so we can do the things that we want to do. Now I can't be in a show that my own production company makes. So yeah, just a little bit of gossip, just a little bit of drama from my good friend and mentor, Adam McKay, my idol.
Well, check it out. See what you think. See if you are on Team Will. So if you like this podcast, please subscribe. As Rob has said, it's brought to you by the Sonar Network. Subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts so other improvisers can find us. And if you've got questions from your community, questions, ideas for episodes, or issues that you're going through you'd like us to talk through, please reach out and we'll put it on an episode. Robbie, nice to see you. Good luck with your migraine, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, AC.
Bye.